Best friend wants me to dump my fiance because he is better than her boyfriend. Am I the a-hole for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiance? Hi, everyone. I've never used Reddit before. I'm angry and English isn't my first language, so please excuse my rambling. I, 21 female, cut contact with one of my closest childhood friends, Mary, 21 female, a few weeks ago. While I feel relieved she's out of my life, most of my family and mutual friends think I overreacted, and now I'm starting to second-guess my decision. Mary and I practically grew up as sisters. We were neighbors, and our parents started arranging playdates for us before we could even walk. From kindergarten to secondary school, we did everything together. If I wasn't at her house, she wasn't mine. I trusted her completely and never thought of her as anything other than my best friend. Things changed when Mary moved away for university. At first, I missed her, but over time, I noticed how much easier my life felt without her constant presence. I wasn't being criticized, guilt-tripped, or forced to justify my choices anymore. It became clear how much control she'd had over me. Mary had a way of dominating every aspect of my life. She'd dismiss my hobbies and pressure me to quit them. And if she didn't like one of my friends, I'd have to cut ties. You could call me a pushover, but when you grow up with someone like that, it's hard to see the manipulation for what it is. Things really came to a head when I met my now fiancé, Dave, 27 male. He's amazing, kind, supportive, and everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. We clicked instantly and he's honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. But, of course, Mary didn't approve. She immediately tried to plant seeds of doubt, saying he was too old, he'd cheat, or he was only using me. Thankfully, for once, I didn't listen to her and I'm so glad I didn't. In December, Dave surprised me with a dream vacation. And during the trip, he proposed. Everything about it was perfect. He planned every little detail and it was more magical than I could have ever imagined. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news with everyone. Naturally, I told Mary expecting at least some excitement, but instead, she downplayed the entire thing. She nitpicked the proposal saying how she would have done it differently and what could have been better. It stung, but I brushed it off and reminded her that it was my proposal, not hers. A few weeks later, we met in person for the first time in months. That's when things completely fell apart. Out of nowhere, Mary told me I should break up with Dave. When I asked why, her reasoning had nothing to do with me. Instead, she compared him to her boyfriend, Julian, 22 male, saying things like, Dave makes more money than Julian, and Dave can give you everything while I have to work for what I want. It was clear she wasn't concerned about me. She was just jealous. She couldn't handle the fact that for once, my life seemed better than hers. That was the breaking point for me. I told her to leave my house and afterward, I sent her a long message explaining how hurt and disappointed I was. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I didn't want her to contact me again. Since then, it feels like she's told everyone in our social circle. Mutual friends and even some family members have reached out saying I was too harsh and I should have handled things differently. They said, that's just how Mary is. You've known her your whole life. She's always been in the spotlight and gotten what she wanted. Some even accused me of breaking her heart and told me it was wrong to choose my fiancé over a lifelong friend. Even my mom said she expected better of me, and that's what's making me question my decision. Did I overreact? Mary has been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. Sure, she has her flaws, but we've also shared countless good times and memories. Am I throwing away years of friendship over this? Should I try to fix things, or was cutting her off the right choice? Well, Pete, from the sounds of it, you've made the right choice. If your best friend wants you to end your engagement because it's better than her relationship, then yeah, that person really doesn't have any good intentions for you at all and she's definitely not your friend. Also, all those people saying that's just how she is, you've known her your whole life. That doesn't mean anything. If a person is toxic to you, it doesn't matter if you've known them your whole life or just for 5 minutes. Cutting them out is always the right choice. So no, OP. I don't think you're the a-hole. I think you've made the right decision. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Usual Year 7281 says, not the a-hole. I cut ties with a friend a couple of years ago that I now recognize as a narcissist. I found out so much since breaking ties with her. And response, was it hard for you as well to cut her off? Because honestly, while I'm happy that she's gone, I'm also kind of sad. We've spent some amazing years together and every memory I have of my childhood includes her. Okay, book 7532 says, bye, Felicia. That bitch is toxic. You need women in your life who will lift you up, not push you down. Cut her off. No invitation to the wedding. And Dopey responds, I completely agree and I'm not planning on inviting her or speaking to her ever again in general, but it's honestly so painful to think about her not being a part of my wedding. I've known her forever and all my childhood memories include her. We've talked about our potential weddings a lot and how great it would be to have each other as our maid of honor. Toss-off mate says, not the a-hole. It's really easy for everyone else to tell you to keep putting up with Mary's BS because they aren't the ones that have to put up with Mary's BS. They want you to fall back in line so they don't have to deal with the hissy fit she's throwing. She wants to steal your peace like she has done your whole life. You are the only person who can protect it. And Dopey responds, my parents basically raised her and view her as a daughter. I guess their main issue with me cutting contact is that they won't get to see their second daughter as often anymore, or at least not without me being mad at them. When I was younger, I never saw Mary's behavior as something bad, and I don't know if my parents were aware of her pushing me into certain directions since she's been incredibly kind to them all the time, and I didn't really say, hey, I quit gymnastics because Mary told me to. And the Green Grace says, yes, you are throwing away years of friendship for your fiancé. Thank the gods. Throwing away a friend who bullies and insults you, who uses guilt trips and emotional manipulation, and who wants to control your life as if you were her puppet, over a fiancé who has only been kind, supportive, generous, and thoughtful, and most importantly, makes you happy. Well done and not the a-hole. Community agrees that OP is not the a-hole, and OP explained why she's so hesitant regarding her parents. So now, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. I honestly didn't expect for so many people to read my post and to respond in such a positive way. Since some people asked for an update, which I also didn't expect, I'm going to explain what happened today. Also, just a quick heads up, this is probably going to be all over the place since a whole lot went down, and I'm mainly writing this down to understand what exactly happened myself. First of all, I want to thank everyone who was so kind to share their own stories. It was honestly incredibly mind-blowing to see how many people went through the same thing that I did. Also, I originally didn't want to talk about or justify my relationship. It's simply not what my post is about directly or an issue that I'm currently facing, but I've decided to address it anyway. I wasn't groomed, loved, bombed, or anything like that. My fiancé is an amazing guy who never forced me to do anything or rushed me into marriage like some comments suggested. I'm marrying him because he's the one I want to spend my future with. Of course, we could have waited a few more years to get engaged or married eventually, but what's the point in waiting when I'm sure that he's the right person for me? Marrying at a young age, I'm going to be 23 when we're officially getting married, by the way, isn't for everyone, but it's also not uncommon. With some people, you simply have a feeling that it's going to work out great, and when it comes to him, I have that. Some other people also suggested that my parents took Mary's side because they don't like Dave, which couldn't be further from the truth. They love him dearly and have considered him part of the family after a few months of us dating. But now on to the actual update. We visited my parents around noon today, talked about everything, and tried to understand what had exactly happened. Turns out, Mary really was telling a made-up story while sprinkling in some truth here and there. Apparently, she told people, or at least my parents, that Dave was cheating on me with a coworker of his, which is why she told me to break up with him. She said that this affair had been going on for at least 4 months and that she knows about it because she'd seen them together at a cafe in a different city a few months ago. Let's assume this would be true. Why didn't she inform me or my parents sooner? Like, imagine your best friend's back then boyfriend is cheating on her and you know about it. Wouldn't you tell her right away? This is also why I can't understand why my parents, especially my mom, would believe her in the first place. According to her story, I got incredibly mad, kicked her out and haven't spoken to her since. Now, some of it is true, as you should know from my original post. For one, her telling me to break up with my fiancé, as well as me kicking her out and cutting contact. However, the whole story about Dave cheating on me is something I've heard about for the first time today, plus it's completely made up. Just to remind you, she told me to break up with him because Dave's a better boyfriend than Julian, her boyfriend. By the way, I also feel sorry for him. I can't imagine how much she must push him around. My mom said that she didn't believe Dave was cheating on me but was disappointed in me for how I handled the situation, especially since I couldn't have known if Mary was telling the truth. She thought that cutting off my best friend for being concerned about me was too harsh and that we should have talked it out. I've also assumed that she's scared to lose longtime friends when I cut contact with Mary, which also turned out to be true. Mary told her mother what happened, who just so happened to be best friends with my mom. And according to my dad, Mary's mother is mad at me for treating her daughter badly and accused my mom of not raising me right. After my mom explained what Mary had told her, I went on to tell her what really went down: the jealousy, the manipulation, the lies, all of it. Basically, the things I've said in my original post plus much more. She didn't believe me at first and said that I was blowing things out of proportion, that Mary had good intentions, but simply didn't know how to communicate them well. I showed her some text messages between Mary and me, told her about past incidents, and my fiancé tried to back me up as best as he could since my mom wasn't listening at all and kept defending Mary. To say that I dug deep and told my parents about all sorts of things is an understatement. I even went as far as telling them about a sex incident. So, yeah, I didn't leave out any details. My dad believed me from the get-go, but my mom kept going back to how great of a person Mary is and how she just wants the best for me. She also kept saying how I've never had an issue with Mary in the past. Not true. And that I'm now creating unnecessary drama because of a misunderstanding. Maybe I'm creating unnecessary drama, maybe not. In my opinion, it's necessary though. I've let her do whatever she wanted for far too long. At some point, my dad simply told her to shut up and stop making excuses for Mary, so at least I have one parent on my side. My dad's always been a very non-confrontational person and never really stood his ground, especially when it came to my mom. But I found out that he thought that Mary didn't have a good influence on me growing up. He apparently also told my mom that he wanted to limit the contact between Mary and me when we were younger, but my mom didn't see his point and let our friendship continue. So, basically, this whole issue could have been avoided if my mom would have put her friendship with Mary's mother aside for her own family. Great. In the end, my mom said that she'd speak to Mary and ask her if what I've said is true, which honestly pissed me off. After everything I've told her, she still wants to crawl to Mary because apparently what her actual daughter says isn't good enough. She tried to justify it since Mary is her daughter too, and it's unfair to just hear out my side of the story. Alright, but you already had a heart-filled conversation with Mary in which she was lying to you completely. After she said all of that, we started a screaming match. I know, not healthy. But it honestly felt so damn good to just let it all out. To say that I cried heavily out of frustration after talking to my mom is an understatement, and I'm so glad that my fiancé was with me because I sure as hell wouldn't have been able to drive home safely. But on a good note, I got ice cream and we watched my favorite show when we arrived back home, which made things better. I've not told my mom that I'm considering not inviting her to my wedding. We're not planning to get married until next year anyway, so there's still enough time for her to make up her mind about who she'd rather believe. Plus, I don't want to create too big of a rift between me and her. As for mutual friends who took Mary's side, I've decided not to respond to them. I'm not sure if Mary told them the same story that she told my parents, but I honestly don't care. I don't want to see Mary ever again, or at least not in the foreseeable future. Having mutual friends would make that a lot harder than it needs to be. Besides, they're not my only friends or close friends of mine. Dave's also okay with me not running after them to clear his name. If this situation should leave this friend group and turned public, I'm going to contact them. But right now, we don't see a point in dealing with Mary's minions. That's something someone called these friends in the comments below my original post. I loved it. Right now, I'm just hoping that Mary messes up her story somehow and that my mom is going to see her for who she really is. While she's been acting absolutely disgusting towards me and basically chooses Mary over me in this situation, I think that I can look past this. It's my mom after all. Cutting off friends is one thing, but cutting off close family, that's a whole different story, and I'll try to mend things the best I can. If she's going to stay loyal to Mary, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's not something I have to think about right now. Once again, thank you for your positive and helpful comments. I've read all of them, but they kept coming in at a rapid speed, and I didn't really know how to respond to most. Also, for those who went through something similar, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, and I'm incredibly glad that as far as the comments go, all of you could find peace in your decision to cut toxic friends out of your lives. Opie, you tried her best to clear things up with your mom, but she decided to put her possible friendship first before her own daughter because that's what she did. It wasn't about Mary. It was about her being worried that her best friend might not want to hang out with her anymore. So she effectively chose that over you. Hopefully, her redemption arc is just starting. But if not, as you say, you've got one parent in your corner and Dave is definitely there. So here's wishing you both the best in the future, OP. Thanks for sharing and take care. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user Possible Seaweed 4815. Malicious Compliance? I used to work at a mid-sized company where our department had its own supply closet. Everyone knew the rules. Take what you need, don't hoard, and keep the area tidy. Simple enough, right? Apparently, not for our new micromanaging office manager, Karen. Karen was obsessed with cutting costs. She'd swoop in like a hawk every morning inspecting the supply closet. If a box of pens was a little lighter or the post-its weren't perfectly aligned, we'd get a stern email about unnecessary consumption. She even implemented a sign-out sheet for supplies. Want a lighter? Better justify it in writing. One day, Karen decided to escalate. She put a lock on the supply closet and declared herself the sole key holder. If anyone needed something, they'd had to email her and wait for her to approve the request. This was, of course, on top of her other duties. so getting a new pen could take hours. Needless to say, productivity started to suffer. Cue malicious compliance. A coworker of mine, Tom, was a bit of a prankster but always stayed within the rules. He decided to test Karen's new system to its limits. Every time he needed anything, no matter how small, he emailed Karen. Need a single paper clip? Email. Need to replace a dried-out marker? Email. Stapler jammed? You guessed it. Email. Tom's meticulousness inspired the rest of us. Soon, the entire department was flooding Karen's inbox with individual requests. Since Karen insisted on handling every single one personally, she quickly became overwhelmed. Approving requests started taking days instead of hours. Meetings were delayed because people didn't have notebooks. Presentations stalled because someone was waiting for a dry erase marker. Management started noticing the bottleneck. Our department's performance metrics were plummeting and everyone pointed the finger at the supply chain fiasco. Karen tried to defend her system, claiming we were being wasteful and needed structure, but the evidence was clear. Her micromanagement was backfiring. After a particularly disastrous week, upper management stepped in. They not only revoked Karen's authority over the supply closet but also gave her a formal reprimand. The lock was removed, the sign-out sheet disappeared, and we went back to the honor system. Karen, humiliated, kept a low profile after that. As for us, we may have lost a week of productivity, but the petty satisfaction of watching Karen drown in her own bureaucracy was worth every second.